Welcome to TORAH Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with episode number 48 of Rabbi Stuart Federow's TNT, the Twisted New Testament, coming to you from Houston, Texas. Rabbi Stuart Federow, welcome, sir. Good to have you back.
It's good to be here.
Good to have you back. That is full show, baby, full show. Awesome. Been a great week. Been fun. Been interesting. It's as I mentioned to you earlier, it's kind of funny reading stuff off of YouTube sometimes. Can't help but think, poor souls. That's all I can think of. It's one of those awkward, things. It's just interesting. You know, the thought that I had on that, by the way, I was thinking for someone says I need to stay out of the video and just do production. And I'm thinking, you know, they have that venue already. He could just go to, JewsForJudaism.ca and he wouldn't have to deal with that. So, by the way, a good plug for Rabbi Michael Skobac, JewsForJudaism.ca. YouTube, and the website, it's really cool. Got to go there. Lots of good stuff. So, Rabbi, how much stuff have you dealt with this weekend during the Christian holiday? I can't say holy day. I can say Christian holiday season.
I'll tell you, we were, how do I word this? We were more than a little bit of nervousness because a year ago, the Friday night of the weekend of Christmas, we had one of our nutcases. Never saw him before. Haven't seen him since, thank God. Come into our synagogue on Friday night during our services to preach the gospel to us.
During a service, came in.
Yes.
You're inside your synagogue.
Yes.
Wow. How do you do? What do you do in a situation?
Take over the pulpit.
What do you do in a situation like that? Do you have people on standby who can actually, escort this guy to a seat or out or something?
We do, but they're congregants.
Right.
So now I have sometimes I accidentally wear it, when it's not, when I'm not at the synagogue, I still keep it on. And when I don't even realize I got it on, I try to remember to leave it at the synagogue, but it's a button. And as soon as you push it, it notifies the police to come no matter what.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So they're, I think, 2.5 minutes away at the most.
Right.
It's ever taken them to. This happens, by the way, usually sometimes between Christmas and Easter. Mm-hmm. December through April, roughly.
Wow. I don't know why, but you made me think of something, a conversation I had with someone on Facebook today. Somebody sent me a message, said they made the mistake of going with their family out to lunch or something like that, and it was their Christmas lunch. And I have to tell you something. This lady said something that if I'd read it a year ago, I would have been, you're just too high strung. But reading it now, I totally know what she's talking about. And I know and I know you're going to completely agree with it, just because we've talked about it before. She said, I'm literally growing to be completely just disgusted with New Testament believers and the New Testament, just completely disgusted with it. Not passively, but totally disgusted with it, because she said she went to lunch today trying to just be quiet and whatever, just be there. And people are pushing her into doing things and waving pork chops in front of her or things like that.
What?
Yeah, just being absolutely rude because they know where she stands.
Family members?
Yeah, family members. And just absolutely just being just downright, and they're supposed to be Christians, and it's like downright just ruthless to her. She said that I just completely hated it. I'm paraphrasing and probably, wording it differently than she said it, but picture was...
She's got more strength than I do, because I'd have gotten up and walked out.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe. And see, the thing about it is, I just see so many people who are coming to that same conclusion, and the more stories I hear of situations that these people coming out of Christianity are dealing with, it makes more and more sense to me. Because in Christianity, my oldest brother did the same thing to me and my wife. Once we were stepping away, granted we weren't coming into TORAH yet, but we were leaving Christianity, going into the Messianic movement, and we were starting to get closer into following the mitzvah and things like this. And he immediately lashed out and was just doing really ridiculously just hateful things. Knowing we don't eat pork, they invited us over, and we came over, and I don't remember the exact scenario, but I remember standing in their foyer, and he says, "Come," he says, "we'll go to lunch sometime." He goes, "There's a great place to serve some great pork barbecue or something like that. A big old fat pork sandwich, boy, it tastes so good." And it's like he knows how we felt about that, yet. It's just weird. I don't know. I don't care what people say, that there's a spirit they say that they have, and it ain't the right one. That's all I can feel. Oh, man, I feel bad for that lady, though, because it was tough. I told her just to be strong, don't fret over it, because what she endured, Hashem will definitely repay her for that, for sure. So, for being able to, for standing.
One hopes.
Yeah, right. So, but anyway, that is not what I was going to talk to you about. By the way, the phone lines are, actually, no, they're not. Now the phone lines are open, 855-95-BIBLE, 855-952-4253. Phone number's on your screen. Call in with your questions regarding New Testament nonsense. And yes, I did say nonsense. Not all of it's nonsense. I get that. Remind me later. But the doctrinal part of it is about, y'all know what I mean. Y'all know where I'm coming from. So anyway, call in with your New Testament questions. Let's talk about this. Holiday seasons, circumcision, you name it. You can talk about anything in there that's mentioned. I'm going to start off with this. So this guy I was telling you about, Alfred M., I think is his name, Facebook name. And he's a Christian missionary. He is, somebody's calling in right now. Let's find out what this is. Let me get the ringer. Don't hang up. There we go. Welcome to the show. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, this is Fernando Colon from South Carolina.
Fernando, welcome, my dear brother. How are you?
Good. Today I finished reading the scroll of Esther. I have it in Hebrew, in English, and to practice my Hebrew. And I read the whole thing today. And I noticed two things that I wrote it down earlier today, and I said, I have to ask Rabbi Federow and William this question. So I was thinking about you guys today when I was reading the Megillah. So the question is the following, William. Are you listening?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Oh, okay. The first question is, I was reading that Mordechai HaYehudi, Mordechai the Jew,
right,
and I thought that there are some names in the New Testament that I feel like they were like fabricated to make the story more spicy.
Really?
For example, Judas Iscariot.
Oh yeah.
They make this guy like the villain of the movie, and he has this name that relates to Yehuda, Jew, and it makes the Judas like a villain. It makes the Jews look like people who are traitors, mischievous. And I don't know if the writer of the New Testament was like trying to bring a hidden message of making the Jews with this name of Judas Iscariot, like people who are like traitors, mischievous, that they can sell you for money. That's my first question. And the second question is that I saw another phrase that King Ahasuerus, tells the Queen Esther, and he says, what do you want, even half of my kingdom? And that relates to me of when King Herod had this young lady dancing for him. And he says to her, what would you like, even half of my kingdom? And she says, I want the head of John the Baptist. I felt like probably they took this line from the book of Esther. That's my question.
Interesting. Okay.
First of all, there's a lot to everything that you just said. There are some scholars believe that the reason why they set up Judas Iscariot as the one who betrays Jesus is exactly for the reason you said. Okay, they gave him the name Judas, so he sounds more like the Jew. Okay, and everything you just said is exactly what these scholars believe about Judas Iscariot. If he was in fact a real person, or if he was a what they call a literary device, Okay, something made up so that the story can develop. And so you're right about Judas Iscariot. Interesting thing, by the way, about the name Iscariot. I'm not quite sure if I don't know what sources there are for the Iscariot part. Okay, I don't know where they get that. There, a lot of some, well, not a lot, but some scholars believe that the name was Judas Iscariot. Okay, the Sicarii were a subset of the Zealots who would take a very, very long, very, very thin, but very, very sharp knife. And you may remember that the Zealots were they were those who wanted the open rebellion against Rome. They wanted to bring out a open rebellion, like a war against Rome, which, by the way, they later did. And the Sicarii were a subset of the Zealots who were the assassins. And they would use this long, thin knife, and quite literally, as they were walking by a person whose back would be to them, okay, as they would walk behind them, they would be able to hit them with the this long, thin blade. The blade would literally go between the ribs into the heart, and they would be able to pull it out again and keep right on walking. And the Sicarii, I believe, is a reference to these assassins, and they think that Judas Iscariot, or Sicarii, was a member of this group who were zealots. And depends on who you ask, which scholar you go by, et cetera, et cetera. But some believe that if it was a true story, which it may not have been, if it was a true story, then one of the reasons why Judas was angry enough at Jesus for turning him into the authorities is that he wasn't violent enough. He wasn't, he had his own streak of violence. We see this all over the place in the New Testament, but it seems to be more directed towards the Jews than it is towards Rome. And so Judas, according to this one theory, got angry at Jesus for not being, strong enough, not being violent against the Romans enough. And again, it's what's the word? It's conjecture.
Right.
So just an interesting tidbit about the word Iscariot. So.
Cool. Well, Fernando, did that answer your question?
Well, there was one more thing he brought up, and that was regarding the, I believe, the book of Esther, but I can't remember. I can't remember exactly what his...
Fernando, what was your question regarding the Scroll of Esther, the other one?
King Herod, there was a young woman.
The dancing part?
Yes. Okay. Yes, thank you, Fernando.
That danced for him.
Right.
Okay.
Let me respond by saying the following. Matthew and Mark and Luke and John never knew Jesus. Jesus was dead in the year 30 to 33, one of those years. Still not quite sure which one. But the book of Mark is the first, then Matthew, then Luke, then John. And the earliest Gospel of Mark is considered to have been written about 64, 65, 66, somewhere in that range. Matthew, 10 years later. Luke, roughly at the same time, maybe 5 to 10 years later, but basically the same as Matthew. And then John around in the 90s. So you're talking about 30 to 60 years after Jesus was dead were these books written. They didn't know Jesus. They're making stuff up. And what did they use as a model? Stories in the Hebrew Scriptures, because they didn't know anything else. So Jesus is supposed to be the better Moses. Okay, Jesus the lawgiver, like Moses was a lawgiver. Interesting. Another side note, by the way, but if you take the Hebrew Scriptures, you take the Torah of the Hebrew Scriptures, so you're just dealing with the 5 books of Moses, and you count up the laws in the Torah, they come to 613. But the way in which you determine what is a law, when God tells Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply, is that a law? We consider it a law for all Jews. Okay. And the systematic way you go about looking at the 5 books of Moses to determine what is a law, if you use those exact same systematic way to determine what is a law on the Gospels in the New Testament, you come up with over 1,000 laws in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. 1,000 different laws, by the way. So we're not talking, well, he says don't do it in here in Matthew, and he says don't do it in Mark, so that's 2. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay? That's a side note. But quite often, they didn't know Jesus, so they're using images, narratives in the Hebrew Scriptures, and basically rewriting them and putting Jesus into the narrative. So Moses gives a Sermon on the Mount, okay, lawgiver on the Mount. So does Jesus. Moses was put in what's it called? A basket. And why? Because Pharaoh was trying to kill all the firstborn. So during the time of Jesus, yes, he was hidden away, and because Herod was trying to kill all the firstborn. Okay, or kill all the, there was, you know what I'm saying?
There's so much replication going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they use the Hebrew Scriptures as a model, or like blueprints are a model to a architect who then constructs the stories about Jesus based on the blueprint, so to speak, of the Hebrew Scripture stories. So Fernando, you're exactly right about that too.
Interesting.
So Rabbi, so you think that they took some of the lines in the Hebrew Bible to kind of like subconsciously make people feel that the language fit into their message. Like, for example,
I don't think it was subconscious at all. I think it was very intentional and very, they knew exactly what they were doing when they did it.
Thank you. That answers my question. I'm very satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando.
I'll be
if
watching.
I can find it,
Shalom,
Fernando, if I can find it, I'll try to. I don't know how to do, notes on YouTube or on Facebook or whatever, but I'll give it to. I'll send it to William if I can find it. But it's a column of Moses' story and then the parallels with Jesus' story, all the way down the line. And it's really interesting. I'll have to find. I'm not sure what I did with that list. So.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, guys. I'll be watching. I'm going to hang up.
Okay, thank you, Fernando.
All right.
Shalom, shalom.
Thank you.
Okay, phone lines are back open. Definitely come on in with your calls, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of replication going on, for sure. Similar stories.
Yeah, they use it as a model.
It's interesting. They needed those to really kind of help, I don't know, to kind of really help substantiate all their claims that they had anyway. So
if I start telling you a story about a guy I know who was so truthful that when he accidentally or on purpose chopped down a cherry tree, and when his father asked him, "Did you chop down the cherry tree?" and he says, "Yes, I confess I did it," and that's being very honest, okay, I am striking bells in your brain, okay, of the image of George Washington. Okay, so by telling you this story, it becomes a familiar story to you, so you can say, yeah, I think I heard that about this guy, when you really heard it first about Washington.
Right. That's a good point.
So
Sure.
I think they were doing it very much with very intentionally. So
Very true. Cool. Okay, phone lines are back open. Feel free to call in. Okay, so what we were talking about slightly before. So this guy Alfred, he's been following along. Just coming in with all these crazy. The typical. I say crazy like they're new. They're not new. It's the same old stories that people have been using for years to try to convert Jews and to try to convince others to return to Christianity. And he posted something that was kind of ironic. He said something about, I wish I could pull it up. I wonder if I can. But we'll come back to it. So just remember, we'll revisit this again.
Hey, hopefully we'll get so many calls we won't be able to.
Hey, that sounds good to me. Shalom and welcome to the show. Please tell us your name. Where are you calling from?
This is Grant. I'm calling from Southern California again.
Hey, shalom, Grant.
Hello, gentlemen. Hope you're having a great night. And we were talking about like the model theory. I'm looking right now, but there's like a battle. It's in the book of Mark, but basically it's like a battle where like there was Jewish people and they ran into like the ocean, and like in the New Testament they use it as like Yeshua was casting the demons into the pigs out of the person, like when he was mutilating himself.
Into the piggies.
But that story like is kind of an allegory, like what you were talking about, of like they're using it to use a battle that was between like 66 AD and about 70, which is about the same time that they're destroying the temple, and it's supposedly a vision. How is it a vision if it's happening right before you? And we also have to think that Josephus, he lived in the Roman palace. He took on the name Flavius. He had all those writings he came out with, the Antiquity of the Jews and a lot of other books. So, all this things where they used the Tanakh to write the New Testament. I totally agree with that, because that's the same conclusion I've come to with the studies. And I just wanted to ask the rabbi what he knew about like the Flavius situation. Obviously some of the other people, there was the first rebellion when Nero had sent people in and stuff like that. And I just wanted to know just any kind of just general stuff like that, just history stuff would be cool.
Okay. You have to remember that Josephus, according to his own writing, do you know the story of Masada?
Caller,
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Okay. Have you heard the story of Masada?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Well, basically what happened is Josephus, according to his own words, was supposed to be the last person who killed themselves, not on Masada, but in another place. And instead of killing himself, he basically gave himself up to the Romans. And he started writing a history, and basically, how do I word this nicely? He's trying to kiss up, I'll put it that way, to the Romans. And he's also trying to put the Jewish community in the best light he can in terms of the Roman government, so that they'll look on the Jews with favor. So it's not necessarily so that he was the last person alive. Go ahead.
Obviously, from them sacking the temple, though, that would be where they got all the Torah scrolls and all the information to rewrite the New Testament. I mean, that's proven through history.
Whoa, wait a minute.
The victor
you wouldn't have to go to to sack the temple to get these texts. The temple wasn't the only place where you would find, texts of the Torah.
Go ahead.
I was just saying.
Oh no, I guess my question would be that, like, would it, when like all that time, like basically during like the rebellions and that stuff, like if we look at history and then we read some of the stories from the New Testament, like they have to be pulling it from that exact time period. Like there's no other way. I guess it's not really a question. It's just like I'm just asking. Like this is like something that I've seen.
I agree with you.
Okay. I just wanted the clarification. Thank you so much.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. Thanks.
But I agree with Grant that there are so many stories that have their parallels in other sources,
right,
that it really throws a light on the New Testament of not the whole thing, but many, 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 many things being pure, unadulterated plagiarism.
Very true. Very true.
You know, even the book of Revelation is basically based on, see if I can remember this, Ezekiel, Daniel, and another one.
It had to seem Jewish.
Right.
Interesting.
To give it credibility.
Although I got to say that had Christmas been introduced in that time, the whole Christianity would have been completely rejected, because there's no way they would have accepted they would have never accepted something like Christmas during the first century Christianity. I don't see that happening.
I think that was maybe not necessarily not necessarily Christmas, okay, coming earlier, but much of the reason why the Jews rejected Christianity had nothing to do with the idea of Jesus as God.
Okay.
Or let me rephrase that. That was only one element among many elements to get Christianity rejected by the Jews of the earliest Christian period. I mean, the whole concept of an incarnated God, the idea of dying, saving man gods,
right?
The whole idea of the view of human beings as evil, and you know, the idea of original sin, the idea of their take on the devil. The devil is mentioned I don't know how many times in the New Testament, and in the Hebrew Scriptures, the Satan is only mentioned like in four times, 5 places, in 4 books. It's Job, First Chronicles, I think Zechariah, and somewhere else, I think. At any rate, the point is that there's a lot more about Christianity than just whether or not Jesus was God that gets rejected by the earliest Jewish community, by the Jews during the earliest period of Christianity, because it was unbiblical, and because it not just the virgin birth and all that stuff, but much of it paralleled views and beliefs not in Judaism but in Hellenism.
Okay. Well, let me take a minute to say hello to a few people out there. Vili Stefano, shalom, welcome to the show. Tracy, Heber Morales has got a good question we're fixing to go to, John 8:12. EVW, who else is there? Let's see, IS, that's in my Bible. Mia Lively, good to see you guys. A lot of good viewers out there. Grant Dunn, Fernando, of course, we just spoke with him. Spoke with Grant. Rabbi Stuart, that dude is like a stalker.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing. We wouldn't have a show without him. Okay, Isaac Keller, welcome you guys. Good to see you. I thought somebody else I saw. Oh yeah, Lori Cash, very good. Very good. Good to see you guys. James, you as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to Heber Morales' question. John 8:12, when Jesus said, "I'm the light of the world," what did he mean? Did he say it? Is there any relation with this and Hanukkah? Thanks. That's a great question. What do you think, Rabbi?
I don't think it's related to Hanukkah. Okay, that's one thing. But when he says, "I'm the light of the world," what we were talking about earlier, and you're going to ask me who, and I'm not going to be able to tell you because of my bad memory, but the idea of a spiritual leader or demigod or what have you, calling himself the light of the world. I am the way, the truth, and the light. All these phrasing is very common among these pagan demigods.
Okay.
So what did he mean by it? I'm not quite sure. Look, what does a light do? A light illuminates to allow a person to see better. So the quote, no matter who it was about, whether it was Jesus or one of these other pagan demigods, okay, is saying, I help you see reality better. So I'm the light of the world. That's how I understand the terminology. When it was attributed to Jesus having said it, I think it's taken, like we were saying earlier, from other hero stories, narratives of other gods and demigods and whatever. Okay, so did he say it? Who knows what he said? The problem with anything in the New Testament is we can't tell from the New Testament what Jesus said, and frankly, from other sources outside of the New Testament, we can't say that there was one. There wasn't Jesus. So there's no way of knowing what in the New Testament Jesus actually did or did not say. Okay. As for this relationship with Hanukkah, no, I don't think so. And here's why. The idea of okay, I wish I had a show and tell right now. The 25th of December comes 4 days after what is the shortest daylight of the year, the winter solstice, the winter, whatever, is that what it's called?
I think so.
Yeah, winter solstice. I get solstice and equinox and all this other stuff mixed up. But what happens is it takes 3 to 4 days to realize that the light of each daytime is getting longer. It takes 3 to 4 days to figure this out. That's why there's a lot of holidays around the winter solstice in a variety of religions throughout the world. It's also not surprising that they call whatever they're doing in, after December 21st, a festival of light. Okay, the idea of light is a recurring theme among, these, someone told me there's over 20 different religions that have specific holidays centered around the winter solstice and a few days after. Again, because that's when you start, day seems a little bit longer today. Daylight, not the day, the day's still 24 hours, but how much light of the 24 hours do you get to see in terms of minutes or hours or whatever? And it's probably in relationship to that, this common pagan theme of a festival of lights in the middle of December to correspond with the winter solstice and how the day is getting longer. The problem is that Hanukkah is not based on the winter solstice. It's actually based on the day upon which historically the temple was taken away from the Jews, and then I think it's 3 years later, but I can't remember which, the Jews took it back over, the 25th day of the Jewish month, which is called Kislev. Okay, but comparing it to the winter solstice and to the Christian calendar, where the winter solstice is always December 21st, Hanukkah can come as early as the end of November, which is like 3 weeks earlier. So the fact that it varies through in the year means it really doesn't have anything to do with the winter solstice. Otherwise, it would always be centered around the winter solstice, which would correspond every year to the 21st of December. So I don't really think there's a relationship with this to Hanukkah, with what Jesus was saying, light of the world. I think what he was, if he even said this, was probably saying, I give you a clearer picture of what the truth is like. Something like that.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
Feel free to jump in here.
You know more about that than I would, so that's funny.
Who knows?
Oh,
At any rate,
wow.
That's how I look at that. So
That's cool. Okay, so I'm going to, unless the phone rings, which I hope it does, I'm going to go ahead and move right on into, I'm actually doing a little quick live to let everybody know on Facebook World that we're actually recording live right now. Okay, so this Alfred gentleman said he quoted something and said, anybody who misinterprets the Torah is, shame on him, curse, whatever the case may be. But he said this on my wall where I had put up a post regarding seeing how many people out there had left Christianity, and he said, you guys are all deceived or something like that. And but then this guy doesn't even know Hebrew. I mean, it's like, how does he know that we're deceived if he doesn't know Hebrew? So my question to you is, how important is it for if a Christian watching this wants to really know the truth, how important is it for them to go to the Jewish source, not necessarily to learn Hebrew, but go to the Jewish source, go to the people who actually know Hebrew to find out what the Hebrew actually says?
No, actually, William, I would say they really do have to themselves learn Hebrew.
Okay.
It's look, I don't care what you're dealing with. I don't care if it's the Vedas of Hinduism or the Koine Greek of the New Testament or the Hebrew of the Tanakh or what have you, unless you only want to rely on somebody else's opinion about what a verse means, you've got to learn that language for yourself so you can make your own translation and come to your own understanding of what the verse really means. You know, there's which we've talked about often before, there's an Italian phrase, traditory, which mean, or maybe it's traditory. Anyway, the point is, it is the translator is a traitor. So whoever does the translation for something, they're giving their own spin, their own own interpretation when they give their own translation of it. Every translation is an interpretation. And it's the interpretation of the person or people who decide, and that's the operative term, decide what a verse means and how to translate that verse.
So what you're saying is, if a Christian goes to his pastor and he says, Pastor, but did you know Isaiah 7:14 in the Hebrews doesn't really say what you say it says, but then they trust their pastor when the pastor turns to them and say, and he explains it back to them in a way that pacifies them to where they feel comfortable. Why should they not trust their pastor? Why is that? It seems obvious, but I mean...
The answer is because the pastor is also probably as well going from somebody else's translation. That's why. Right. Okay, I'll give you a better one. Or not better, but additional to what you were saying.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And that's the Isaiah 53 stuff. Okay. Anytime anybody talks to me about Isaiah 53, the first question I ask them is, who was Isaiah preaching to? Who was Isaiah talking to? Who was Isaiah concerned about? They have to answer the word, the people of Israel. They have to answer the Jews. They have to answer that the people Isaiah was preaching to, speaking to, concerned with, etc., were the Jewish people. I said, fine. Now take a look at Isaiah 52:14. Okay, and you can't. It's so clear in the Hebrew, but if you go by translations, you never know what you're going to get.
Right.
Isaiah 52:14. As many were astonished at
the
or he.
Okay.
Or him.
Gotcha. Let's see what the Hebrew is.
Okay. Well, that's the question.
Okay.
The Hebrew is not him. As many were astonished at you. The Hebrew is lecha.
Oh, my God.
It is explicitly clear. Kosher shamu alecha. Okay?
Alecha, right there it is. Boom.
Okay. It means many were astonished at you.
Okay.
Okay. So if Isaiah is speaking to the Jews and he's talking about this servant, and he says about the servant that they were astonished at you, that means he's talking about the Jewish people. From verse 14 on, if you don't know the Hebrew, some will translate it properly as many were astonished at you, but many, especially Christian translations, will translate it as many were astonished at him.
Mm-hmm.
It's one word. Everything else is the same. It's either
Right.
him or you.
Right.
The Hebrew is clearly you. Isaiah was speaking to the Jews. He's therefore talking about the Jews when he's talking about this servant. It's clear. It's right there. But if you only go by somebody else's translation, you may never know that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Unbelievable.
That's how important it is. So,
Yeah. I have been studying Hebrew for about 4 years now. Not studying it. I've been trying to learn it off and on for about 4.5 years now. And
Okay.
I got to a stopping point mainly because I'm not I don't know, it's difficult for me. I took it as far as I thought I could, and then I stopped for about a year, and I just now started learning like verb tenses and things like that. And
Right.
and now it's like what I knew before, and I was excited about. Now I'm learning this other stuff, and I'm like, whoa, I'm learning so much more as I go along. That it amazes me that you literally have to pay attention to every letter that's in there, not just a generalized word. And I think that's where Christians make their mistake, is they'll see something, they'll find a familiar word, and they'll think they'll know exactly what it means when they really are missing the context altogether, or they're missing the point, or they're missing the past or future tense, or they're missing him or her, or
Exactly.
you or me or him. And all that stuff
Right.
is critical. It's absolutely critically important, So it's wonderful. I think it's great. So
whoever this Albert or whatever is you got to know the Hebrew. You got to know the Koine Greek. You got to know the Sanskrit for the Vedas. You have to know. I mean, if you're going to really study any religion, or more accurately, any religion's written text, you got to learn the language of that text.
right, indeed.
Otherwise, you're relying on somebody else's opinion. That's all it is.
Right. Unbelievable. Jannies and Jamborees. That's funny. Sons of Thunder. I was thinking about that earlier. I was thinking it's so interesting how when somebody first told me that Christianity, that Jesus wasn't the only virgin birth story in history and the only demigod story in history. First I thought they were just making it up, but I mean it's really true. And it's like most of their birthdays are right around the same time. I mean, and God goes to the trouble of saying, "Do not worship me the way other nations worship their gods." Why would he even make anything even remotely similar if he said, "Stay away from that garbage," And so, I don't know.
Wait, say it again.
Okay, so if God said, "Don't worship me the way other nations worship their gods,"
Right.
why would God allow a truth of his salvation to come in a form that another God would have done it?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Interesting. Very interesting.
All right. We have a question.
Okay, what's your question there?
This is from Evergreen.
Okay.
You see it up on the live chat?
I will here in just a second.
Okay.
YouTube, there it is right there. Okay.
With the word William in capital letters.
Oh, yeah,
Evergreen.
yeah. William, can you ask Rabbi Stuart to discuss this? Did you know that the Torah was created 2,000 years before the universe was created?
Right.
The Torah existed 2,000 years before. Okay, so, and then later he asked a follow-up question and says, can you please verify that this is true? Yes, I think. Unless he retracted his statement. I think it was first. It was presented as a fact, and then I think he said to ask Rabbi. So let's hold on to that. Let's take this caller.
Absolutely.
Okay, caller, welcome to the show. Please tell us your name. Where are you calling from?
Hi, it's David from London.
Hey, David, welcome back to the show. What's the question for Rabbi?
I wanted to know. You said that it was not possible for. I think you might have said that it wasn't possible for Jesus to have been a rabbi because I can't remember the exact reason, but it was to do with either the Romans prevented poor people from becoming rabbis, or you didn't have rabbis they weren't called rabbis at that time. But there is Rabban Gamliel, who I guess was a rabbi sort of first century. I'm just wondering how that works historically. Also, it seems like there isn't much time between the time that the Romans might have stopped the smicha or prevented smicha from being passed on, and the Second Temple when the rabbinic term rabbi was introduced. So I'm a bit confused with that history, and also since you have Rabban Gamliel was a rabbi, how is it possible that Jesus couldn't have been a rabbi?
Okay, can you hear me? It's very simple. Moses is also called Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our rabbi. Was Moses a rabbi?
I guess it was a term put on later.
Exactly the same thing with Rabban Gamliel. Okay, what's the word? Retroactively, retrospectively, I forgot the word.
Right.
They're calling Moses the rabbi as our rabbi, okay? And they're also calling, the same thing happens with Rabban Gamliel, not Rabbi, okay, but Rabban Gamliel, it's the same thing. Gamliel, and which Gamliel you're talking about? The one in 80, okay, and the one who created things, I don't know, like the Passover Seder, prayer book, or the Gamliel the first, who died like in about the year, I forgot.
Good question.
I forgot. I'll have to look it up again.
Either.
And I think Gamliel the second was like the grandson or something like that. I'll have to. I don't remember the history very well.
David, hang on. David, David. Sorry, you both are talking at the same time. We can't hear a word either one of you are saying.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
No, it's okay. Go ahead and let Rabbi finish up, and then he'll break for you to go ahead and continue. Go ahead, Rabbi.
All right. Well, what I was saying is that there were two Gamliels. Gamaliel. There's two of them. There's one who lived around the year 80, called Gamaliel the second. Gamaliel the first, I believe, with his grandfather, but I'll have to check on that. I don't remember exactly. And Gamaliel the first died like in the year 10 or 20 or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And if you're talking about Gamaliel the second, the one who created things like the Passover Seder, the prayer book, the earliest whatever, then he could have been called Rabbi, Rabban Gamliel. But the same way that we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, when the word rabbi didn't exist in the days of Moses, you've got the same kind of thing with the word rabbi. It didn't come into existence. Okay, maybe that's too strong. It wasn't used as a title until after the first destruction of the temple. I'm sorry, start over. Until after the second destruction of the temple in the year 70. Okay, now what do you say?
Okay, David, go ahead with your follow-up.
I just wanted to know, do you have a source for that the term rabbi only became introduced up at 70 AD after the destruction of the Second Temple?
Wait, what do you ask?
So is there a source to where he can clarify that or verify that the term rabbi did not occur
Good
until
question.
later?
While we're talking, I will try to find remember the source. Okay?
Okay, so just keep watching in, David, and just listen in. He might drop you in a source here pretty soon, okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, shalom, bye-bye.
Shalom.
Oh, cool. All right, well, good deal. Well, we got about 10 minutes left, so. Wonderful. Phone lines are back open. Number will be back up on your screen in about 1 second. There it is.
Okay.
Did you find another question you want to answer?
It's not exactly a source, okay?
Okay.
And he may not particularly like it. Okay. Not helpful. The
2,000-year
okay.
thing comment.
According to Wikipedia, for what that may or may not be worth, okay, the Mishnah was written from the year 200 CE. Start over. The Mishnah was written between the year 200 BCE and the 200 CE. That's a 400-year period. Okay? But the first sage, according to this Wikipedia article, the first sage for whom the Mishnah uses the title of rabbi was Yochanan ben Zakkai. Yochanan ben Zakkai survived the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70 and is the one who established Yavna. So, if the first person the Mishnah calls rabbi was a person who lived in the year 70, and the Mishnah having been, what's the word? Put together, in the year 200.
Right.
And the first one they're using the term rabbi, the title rabbi for, is about the year 70. That just, makes sense.
Right.
Okay. Rav is the root of rabbi. It means great. The word rabbi does not mean teacher.
Right.
Even if teaching is one of the things rabbis do, it's not what the word rabbi means. Okay.
There is an accepted teaching on it that it is also an acronym, and I know, Rabbi, you've talked about that before, but Rosh Bnei Israel, the heads of the children of Israel, which is an accepted acronym for it as well. So yeah, good point. Just like they didn't have synagogues back in Moses' day, it just didn't happen. So can you go to synagogue? Do you have to go to synagogue on Shabbat? Well, did Moses go? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying those are thoughts that come out. So Missouri Reaper says, hello, Rabbi, or hey, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Mitch, good to see you, buddy. EVW. Let's see what else we got. Evergreen. Okay, Evergreen says, Rabbi Stuart, did you forget about me? Let's go back and see what Evergreen said.
Is this the question we were going to... Oh, yeah. We were going to...
Oh, the 2,000 year thing, right.
Right. We had just started to talk about it, Evergreen, and then we got the phone call, and phone calls take precedence.
Absolutely. Every time.
Okay, so the idea of the Torah being created 2,000 years before the universe was created and acting as a guide for God, is a midrash. I think it goes back all the way to Genesis Rabbah, but I'd have to check for sure. And I'm not going to do that now.
Right.
But by the way, you have the same concept, personally stolen, in my opinion, from the Midrash regarding the Torah, when the New Testament Gospel of John begins. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay, you have the same basic idea of the origins of Jesus predating existence.
Right.
Okay, predating creation. So you have the same kind of mystical, midrashic kind of approach in the New Testament that you also find in the Hebrew. In the rabbinic writings. It'd take too long to go look it up right now, but I'm pretty sure that goes back to Midrash Rabbah, Genesis Rabbah specifically.
Right. Actually,
but I'm not sure. Again, one of my failings is remembering chapter and verse and the sources of exact quotations and who said what when. I remember what they said. I don't necessarily remember who said it or when they said it.
Right.
So.
Beautimus. Okay, we'll move on to another question. Let's see what we got here. Oh, we are just about out of time, but just want to say thank you also. A lot of people out there, you guys are spreading the word about TORAH Talk, and I'm getting a few donations in from time to time for the new building fund. Yes, please donate,
because it takes time and energy away from William, and not just mine, but so many others get video recorded, whatever the term is. I'm an old man. I said video. I almost said videotape. But please make donations for William. Otherwise, he can't keep doing this, and I want to stay on the air. I'm selfish. Give him the money so I can stay on.
I want you to stay on the air too. Good thing is, if something happens, we don't. We're close enough. We can still be friends. So in the real world. So, but yeah, it's been really cool. Just been nice to see some things coming in. Like I said, I bit this thing off on my own, but if you guys will certainly want to jump in, man, more than welcome to it. TonighTalk.com. Just look for the PayPal button at the bottom of the front page or the second page, the donate tab, whatever. And so, but anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, I've been finding a lot of testimonies on this post that I put up on Facebook, Rabbi. At first, I was really overwhelmed by the responses. The first post I put up basically was just simply asked, how many of you have left Christianity like I did, just in general. And I said, please click the like button so we can kind of see how many of you. And within 24 hours, there was over 300 people who actually clicked the like, and actually about 150 comments on that. And so the next day I went back and put another post and says, now tell me why you left Christianity. And I was trying to keep it short because I figured, bypassers might read it, and the shorter it is, the more apt they will to actually read all the details of it. But I was reading a lot of the stories, and there's a lot of people out there that I'm really pleased to see. More and more of them that were pastors or ex-Messianic teachers, and see, you get talked to Christians all the time, and they'll call you blind, yet that person who calls you blind, number one, has never even read the New Testament through and through, never read the Old Testament through and through, but they call you blind, yet they will call a pastor blind for studying so much that he learned Hebrew and that he left Christianity too, but now he's blind because he learned too much. We've discussed this anomaly before. It makes no sense. I mean,
circular reasoning.
Oh my gosh, it is so absolutely ridiculous.
By the way, can I make an analogy too?
Yes, absolutely. I had a chip on my hat. I just reached up and scratched my head. Okay, yes, go ahead.
The Quran.
Okay.
The Muslim community says, oh, you cannot understand, you cannot know the Quran unless you know the Arabic. The vast majority of Muslims who are not Arab, okay, like Indonesia, the native language there is not Arabic, okay, but Indonesia is a very Muslim community.
Right.
Okay, they do read it, not all of them certainly, but most certainly, read the Quran in translation into the local language of Indonesia. This is true in the Muslim areas of India and the Far East. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay. The people, everybody makes a claim, but it's actually a valid claim for all. If you don't know the original language, you're allowing someone else to tell you what it means. Mm-hmm. They could be scholarly, they could be not scholarly, okay? They could tell you the best translation of all is the New International Version, which by far it is not. Okay, they'll say, oh, the King James is a terrible translation. Well, yes, okay, but if you know the passages to be careful on, the rest of it's not so bad.
Right. Yeah,
okay.
Very true.
At any rate.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Julie Taylor wants us to say, hi, Ron, who's her dad. Hi.
Wait. I didn't see that. Hey, Julie.
Julie says, can you say hi to my dad, Ron? Hi, Ron.
Hi, Ron. Shalom from Julie's friends, Rabbi Federow and I. So, welcome. Very good. Oh, you got some more hi Rons coming
Mitch
to you on the
FTD,
YouTube channel.
Bart Ehrman on the history of the New Testament. Absolutely.
Nice. Yes, indeed.
Yep.
Aleichem Shalom, Mr. Grant Dunn. It is a pleasure. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been a blast as usual. This is definitely a wonderful, wonderful highlight. And thank you, Tracy. You're very welcome. Thank you all for tuning in. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and don't forget.
Hey, William.
Yes, sir.
The one thing we haven't done
is the finger dance. I don't know what.
No. The one thing we haven't done tonight. Wish everybody a merry.
Oh, you ain't gonna hear that from me. Happy Hanukkah or something like that. Oh boy, I could say happy holidays. I mean, there's gonna be Christians watching, you know. And the thing is, I don't wish anybody any ill. I don't care what religion you are, you know. Just do your thing. Just study your Bible. That's all I got at. Study the Hebrew Scriptures.
Me alone. I don't care what you believe. Just leave. William, my mother, when I was off at college,
right?
Okay, seminary.
Okay.
I was so impish. God forgive me, may she forgive me. But I'd call her up and I'd say, Merry Christmas. She'd get so mad.
Are you serious?
I don't celebrate. I get enough of that from the
That's funny. That's funny. Unbelievable. Well, cool deal. Well, I guess we're going to sign off here. If I could find my mouse. There it is right there. Get some Muzak-a-rackin'. So show us the finger dance. Come on. There it is, the infamous Rabbi and his pet fingers. All right, shalom, everybody. It's so good to see you all, you out there. Great viewing tonight. Good questions, good answers. And we'll see you guys 1 week from tonight, Hashem willing. Same time, same place. So you guys have a great week. Shavua Tov. And we love you guys. Y'all take care. Bye-bye. Shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom, shalom.
חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד איפוק זו העוצמה ויתור